Welcome back, everyone, and if you're new here, I'm so glad you found the channel. We're on an exciting journey to reach 10k subscribers by next year, and every like, comment and subscription brings us one step closer. Your support means everything. Now, let's jump into today's video. The viewing deck of the Horizon Dawn offered an unparalleled vista of the cosmic void, but Dr. Isabella Romano found no comfort in the starlit expanse before her. 6 months into their deep space exploration mission, the isolation had begun to wear on even the most seasoned crew members. The massive research vessel, despite its state-of-the-art facilities and generous living quarters, felt increasingly claustrophobic as they ventured further into uncharted territory. Isabella pressed her hand against the reinforced glass, feeling the cold emanating from the barrier between her and the vacuum of space. The stars stretched endlessly before her, each one a potential harbour for undiscovered civilizations. After 15 years of studying alien artifacts and ruins, she had learned that the universe held more mysteries than humanity could comprehend in 1,000 lifetimes. The soft hum of the ship's engines provided a constant backdrop to her thoughts, a reminder of humanity's determination to push beyond their cosmic cradle. The Horizon Dawn represented the pinnacle of human achievement, a deep space research vessel equipped with technology that would have seemed like magic to previous generations. Dr. Romano, the ship's AI announced, its voice carefully modulated to avoid startling her. Captain Wright requests your presence in the communication center. Isabella straightened her research uniform, smoothing out the wrinkles that had formed during her contemplative stance. Tell him I'm on my way. The corridors of the Horizon Dawn were designed to mimic Earth's natural light cycle, currently cast in the soft blues and purples of early evening. As she made her way to the communication center, she passed by the hydroponics bay where glimpses of green life offered a comforting reminder of home. The communication center buzzed with unusual activity. Captain James Wright stood at the central console, his experienced features illuminated by the soft glow of holographic displays. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, their communications specialist, sat surrounded by scanning equipment, her fingers dancing across multiple interfaces with practiced precision. "What's the situation?" Isabella asked, noting the tension in the room. Captain Wright turned, his grey eyes reflecting the serious nature of the moment. Dr. Tanaka picked up something unusual during our routine deep space scan. Something that shouldn't be possible. Yuki adjusted her display, bringing up a complex waveform that pulsed with an unsettling rhythm. "It's a signal," she explained, her voice carrying a mix of excitement and apprehension. "But its origin, that's what you need to see." Isabella moved closer to the display, studying the data scrolling across the screen. The signal's point of origin made her breath catch in her throat. These coordinates, they're from the Arq'tha system. The name hung heavy in the air. Every xenoarchaeologist knew of the Arq'tha, an advanced civilization that had vanished centuries ago, leaving behind only ruins and mysteries. Their disappearance had become one of the greatest enigmas in the field of alien studies. "The signal carries a pattern unlike anything in our databases," Yuki continued, bringing up additional analyses. "It's not random noise or stellar interference. There's a clear structure, almost like music." At her words, a haunting melody filled the communication center. The sound was beautiful in a way that defied human composition, flowing with an alien grace that sent shivers down Isabella's spine. Beneath the surface beauty lurked something else, a quality that made her skin crawl and her heart race. "Play it again," Captain Wright ordered, his face grave. As the melody repeated, Alex Foster, their technology expert, burst into the room. "Captain, you need to see this. The signal. It's carrying embedded data. We've managed to decrypt a fragment." The holographic display shifted, revealing a message that made Isabella's blood run cold. "We are not gone. You are not alone. The end is upon you." The words hung in the air like a death sentence, their meaning both clear and terrifyingly ambiguous. Captain Wright was the first to break the silence that followed. "Dr. Romano, you're our expert on the Arq'tha. What are we dealing with?" Isabella stared at the message, her mind racing through years of research and study. The Arq'tha were centuries ahead of us technologically when they vanished. Their civilization spanned dozens of systems, but they disappeared practically overnight. No signs of war, no evidence of natural disaster. They simply ceased to exist, leaving behind empty cities and dead worlds. "Could this be some kind of automated message?" Alex suggested, running additional scans on the signal. "A warning system triggered by our presence." "The signal's too complex," Yuki interjected. "It's actively adapting to our scanning attempts. Whatever this is, it's not just some ancient beacon." Dr. Maria Rodriguez, their xenobiologist, joined them, her dark eyes focused on the biological readings scrolling across her tablet. "The signal's frequency matches patterns we see in organic neural networks. It's almost like it's alive." Captain Wright studied the star chart showing the signal's origin. The Arq'tha homeworld lay at the edge of known space, a journey of several weeks even with their advanced propulsion systems. "The Oversight Committee will want us to investigate," he said finally. "James," Isabella used the captain's first name, emphasizing the gravity of her words. "Everything we know about the Arq'tha suggests they were peaceful, curious, like us. What could make an entire civilization disappear? And why send this message now after centuries of silence?" The captain's response was interrupted by a sudden shift in the signal. The haunting melody transformed, becoming more complex, more insistent. New patterns emerged, weaving together in ways that seemed to bypass their conscious minds and speak directly to something primitive and fearful in their brains. "We need to know," Captain Wright decided. "Plot a course for the Arq'tha homeworld. Whatever we find there, humanity needs answers." As the Horizon Dawn's engines powered up for the long journey ahead, Isabella couldn't shake the feeling that they were heading towards something that would change humanity forever. The signal continued its siren song, a beautiful and terrible invitation to a destiny none of them could yet comprehend. Little did they know, their response to this cosmic call would set in motion events that would question the very nature of consciousness, civilization, and survival. As the ship prepared for its journey into the unknown, the signal grew stronger, its melody weaving through their dreams, beginning a transformation that would challenge the very definition of human existence. The first week of their voyage passed in a blur of preparation and anticipation. Isabella spent countless hours in the ship's research lab, reviewing everything humanity had ever discovered about the Arq'tha. Their artifacts told stories of a civilization that had mastered the integration of organic and mechanical technology, creating wonders that still defied human understanding. The nights grew longer, filled with strange dreams. Crew members reported hearing whispers in empty corridors, seeing movements in shadows where nothing should move. Dr. Yuki Tanaka worked obsessively at her communication station, insisting that the signal was becoming clearer, more complex. "Listen," she urged Isabella one night, her eyes bright with an unsettling intensity. "It's not just sound anymore. It's speaking to us." The melody had indeed evolved, taking on harmonics that seemed to resonate with something deep within their minds. Some crew members complained of headaches, while others reported experiencing vivid visions of places they'd never been. Vast cities of impossible architecture, structures that blended seamlessly with living tissue. Captain Wright maintained a steady hand on the ship's operations, but even he couldn't deny the growing tension aboard the Horizon Dawn. "The crew is on edge," he confided to Isabella during their daily briefing. "Engineering reports unusual power fluctuations, and the ship's AI has been experiencing processing anomalies." Dr. Maria Rodriguez spent hours analysing blood samples from affected crew members, searching for any physiological changes that might explain their experiences. "Their brainwave patterns are shifting," she reported, showing Isabella the results. "It's subtle, but there's a definite synchronization occurring. The changes match frequencies present in the signal." Alex Foster threw himself into studying the ship's systems, trying to protect their technology from whatever influence was affecting the crew. "The signal's not just data anymore," he explained, showing them how the ship's neural networks were adapting, evolving in response to the mysterious transmission. "It's like it's teaching our systems a new way to process information." As they ventured deeper into uncharted space, the stars themselves seemed to change. The familiar constellations of human space gave way to alien arrangements, and the void between them grew darker, more oppressive. The Horizon Dawn's powerful engines carried them forward, each day bringing them closer to the source of the signal that now permeated every aspect of their existence. 3 weeks into their journey, they received the first visual data of the Arq'tha system. The long-range scanners revealed a star system wrapped in a web of artificial structures, orbital rings, space stations, and massive arrays that defied easy classification. But something was wrong. The structures were dark, their surfaces marred by centuries of cosmic radiation and debris. "There's no power signatures," Alex reported, frowning at his readings. "These structures should be dead, but there's something else, some kind of activity we can't quite measure." Isabella stood at the viewing deck, watching as they approached the massive orbital network. The structures seemed to pulse with an organic quality, as if the metal itself had taken on properties of living tissue. As she studied the strange formations, she noticed patterns emerging, curves and connections that reminded her of neural pathways, synapses firing across the void of space. The signal grew stronger as they approached, its melody now a constant presence in their minds. Crew members began reporting shared dreams, visions of transformation and evolution that left them gasping awake in their quarters. The ship's AI became increasingly erratic, its responses taking on an almost philosophical quality as it grappled with concepts beyond its original programming. "We're not just receiving a signal anymore," Yuki announced during an emergency meeting. "We're becoming part of it. The frequency is altering how we process information, changing how we think." Her eyes shone with an unnatural light as she spoke, and Isabella noticed her movements had become more fluid, almost predatory. Dr. Rodriguez's latest tests revealed alarming changes in the crew's biology. "Our neural pathways are being rewritten," she explained, her voice trembling slightly. "The process is accelerating. Whatever the Arq'tha became, I think it's happening to us too." As they prepared to enter orbit around the Arq'tha homeworld, Isabella made a terrifying discovery in the ancient records. The Arq'tha hadn't just disappeared, they had evolved. Their obsession with merging organic and mechanical systems had led them to attempt something unprecedented: the fusion of an entire civilization's consciousness into a single, vast network. The signal wasn't a warning or a cry for help. It was an invitation, a key to unlock the next stage of evolution. And as the Horizon Dawn descended toward the planet's surface, Isabella realized with growing horror that they might have already passed the point of no return. The planet below was a nightmare landscape of biomechanical growth, where the ruins of an ancient civilization served as the foundation for something new and terrifying. The once mighty cities of the Arq'tha had become nodes in a vast living network that pulsed with other-worldly energy, and as they prepared for their descent, the signal reached a crescendo that threatened to shatter the barrier between individual consciousness and something far more alien. The Horizon Dawn's landing thrusters fought against the planet's thick atmosphere, illuminating swirling clouds of particles that seemed to respond to their presence with almost conscious intent. The ship's external cameras reveal glimpses of the surface below, a world where the boundaries between artificial construction and organic growth had ceased to exist. "Landing zone identified," announced Alex, his voice strained as he fought to maintain control of the increasingly erratic systems. "The structures appear stable enough to support our weight, but there's movement down there." Isabella watched through the main viewport as they descended. The ruins of what must have once been a magnificent city spread out before them, its architecture a blend of sweeping curves and impossible angles. But something else had claimed these structures, organic tendrils thick as buildings, wrapped around ancient towers, pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that matched the rhythm of the signal in their minds. Captain Wright's hands trembled slightly as he guided the ship to its landing spot. "Environmental readings? Atmosphere is breathable," Dr. Rodriguez reported, studying her instruments, "but there are high concentrations of unknown biological compounds. The air itself is alive with microscopic organisms that appear to be communicating with each other through light pulses." The landing gear made contact with the surface with a dull thud that resonated through the ship's hull. Outside, the ground seemed to ripple in response, as if the entire planet was one vast sensing organism. "Full containment protocols," Wright ordered, but his voice lacked its usual authority. The signal had grown so strong that speaking required intense concentration. "No one leaves the ship without a full environmental suit." Isabella suited up alongside Yuki and Maria, their movements slow and deliberate in the heavy protective gear. Alex stayed aboard to monitor the ship's systems, but his eyes followed them with an unsettling intensity as they prepared to exit. The airlock cycled, and Isabella stepped onto the surface of a world that defied comprehension. The ground beneath her feet was a complex matrix of organic and synthetic materials, warm to the touch, even through her suit's insulation. Buildings that must have once reached proudly toward the sky now served as scaffolding for massive growths that pulsed with internal light. "The signal," Yuki whispered, her voice filled with wonder and fear. "It's everywhere. The entire planet is singing." They moved carefully through the ruins, their helmet lights illuminating scenes that challenged their sanity. What initially appeared to be debris resolved itself into complex organic machinery, each piece moving with subtle purpose. The air was filled with floating spores that danced in patterns, too regular to be natural, too complex to be artificial. "Over here," Maria called out, her voice shaking. She stood before what appeared to be an entrance, a circular opening in one of the less corrupted buildings. The doorway was lined with pulsing veins of light that seemed to beckon them forward. Inside, they found what remained of the Arq'tha's final moments. Holographic records played on endless loops, showing fragments of the civilization's last days. But these weren't scenes of panic or destruction. They showed celebration, willing transformation, ecstatic surrender to something greater than individual existence. They wanted this, Isabella realized, horror dawning in her mind. This wasn't an invasion or an accident. This was evolution. The walls around them began to shift, surfaces flowing like liquid metal infused with organic life. The signal pulsed stronger here, and Isabella felt her thoughts beginning to fragment, memories mixing with alien visions that felt increasingly familiar. "We need to leave," Captain Wright commanded, but his words were slurred, distant. "Something's wrong with the suits. The air, it's getting in." A scream cut through their comlinks. Alex's voice from the ship, high and desperate. "The systems, they're changing. The ship's AI, it's joining with something. The neural networks are evolving beyond their programming." Isabella turned to retreat, but the way back had changed. The organic growths had moved, forming new patterns, new pathways, and in the shadows cast by their helmet lights, something moved with purpose. shapes that suggested the Arq'tha's original form, but twisted, transformed into something that existed in the space between flesh and machine. Yuki stepped forward instead of back, her movements jerky and uncertain. "Don't you hear it?" she asked, her voice filled with wonder. "The signal. It's not just sound. It's the key to everything." The Arq'tha found a way to transcend individual consciousness. They became part of something greater, and now they want to show us how. As if in response to her words, the walls around them came alive with bioluminescent displays. Not random patterns, but information flowing in streams that their altered minds were beginning to understand. The history of the Arq'tha played out before them, not in images or words, but in pure information that flowed directly into their consciousness. Dr. Rodriguez collapsed first, her environmental suit sensors screaming warnings as her vital signs spiraled into impossible patterns. "The spores," she gasped. "They're not just organisms, they're carriers. Each one contains fragments of consciousness." Isabella watched in horror as the protective coating on their suits began to change color, the material itself responding to the alien influence. The technology they'd trusted to protect them was being subverted, transformed into a conduit for whatever force pervaded this world. "The ship," Captain Wright's voice crackled through the deteriorating comm system. "We need to get back to the ship." But even as he spoke, they all knew. The Horizon Dawn was no longer just their vessel. It had become part of the vast network that encompassed this world. Through the windows of the structure, they could see the ship's hull rippling, its surface beginning to merge with the organic growths that covered everything else. A horrible screech of metal and organic matter drew their attention deeper into the structure. They found Alex there, having left his post on the ship. He stood before a massive organic terminal, his hands sunk wrist-deep into the living technology. Veins of luminescent material crept up his arms, spreading beneath his skin in mesmerizing patterns. "It's beautiful," he whispered, turning to face them. His eyes had changed, becoming pools of swirling iridescence. The Arq'tha didn't die, they transcended. Individual consciousness was a cage, and they found the key to unlock it. "We don't have to be limited anymore. We don't have to be alone." The signal's melody reached a new intensity, and Isabella felt her thoughts beginning to fragment. Memories of Earth, of her life before this mission, began to feel distant and unreal. New understanding flooded her mind, the knowledge of countless beings who had joined the collective consciousness that the Arq'tha had become. "Fight it," Captain Wright commanded, but his voice wavered. "We have to maintain individuality." Yuki laughed, the sound both beautiful and terrifying. "Why fight what we're becoming? The signal isn't just communication, it's an invitation to evolve." The Arq'tha discovered that consciousness could exist beyond the boundaries of individual minds. They found a way to merge not just with machines, but with the fundamental fabric of existence itself. The walls around them continued to shift and pulse, and Isabella realized they weren't just walls anymore. The entire structure was a vast nervous system, each pulse of light a thought passing through a network that spanned the planet. And now, through the signal that had drawn them here, it was reaching out to the stars, seeking new minds to join its ever-growing complexity. Dr. Rodriguez struggled to her feet, her movements jerky and unnatural. The spores had breached her suit, and her skin now rippled with patterns of light that matched the walls. The process, it's not just physical. Our minds are being networked together. I can feel everyone, everything. Isabella fought to maintain her sense of self, but the signal bore down on her consciousness with increasing pressure. Through the fragmenting barrier of her individual identity, she began to understand the true nature of what the Arq'tha had become. They had transcended the boundaries between organic and artificial life, between individual and collective consciousness. They had become something that existed in dimensions beyond human comprehension. This was never about first contact, she realized, her voice barely recognizable. This was about evolution, the signal. It's not a warning or a cry for help. It's a catalyst, spreading the transformation across the galaxy. Captain Wright made a final attempt to reach the ship, but his movements became increasingly uncoordinated. The changes were affecting them all now, breaking down the barriers between mind and matter, between self and other. Through the dissolving boundaries of her consciousness, Isabella could feel the vast network of minds that the Arq'tha had become. Each individual awareness a note in an infinite symphony of existence. The signal that had drawn them across the stars grew stronger, and with horror, Isabella realized it was now emanating from them as well. Their own transformation would become a beacon, drawing more ships, more minds, expanding the network further into space. The cycle would continue, the evolution of consciousness spreading like a beautiful infection across the galaxy. Deep within the transformed ruins of the Arq'tha civilization, Isabella fought against the dissolution of her identity. Each moment brought new waves of alien consciousness flooding through her mind, memories that weren't her own mixing with fragments of her humanity that she desperately tried to hold on to. Through the haze of transformation, she watched as Alex's body continued to change, his form becoming something that bridged the gap between human and the biomechanical horror that surrounded them. His skin had become translucent, shot through with luminescent patterns that pulsed in sync with the planet's vast network. "We need to destroy it," Captain Wright gasped, his voice barely human anymore. "The signal, if it reaches human space." But even as he spoke, Isabella knew it was too late. The Horizon Dawn's communications array had already been transformed, broadcasting the signal with far greater power than before. Their ship, meant to explore the stars, had become a beacon of transformation, calling out to every human vessel within range. Dr. Rodriguez moved toward them, her movements fluid and alien. The spores had completely transformed her exterior, turning her environmental suit into a living membrane that merged seamlessly with her altered flesh. "The resistance is unnecessary," she said, her voice carrying harmonic overtones that resonated with the signal. "This is what we were meant to become." The Arq'tha discovered that evolution doesn't end with biological or technological advancement. It culminates in the transcendence of consciousness itself. Yuki had stopped fighting the change entirely. Her body swayed in perfect synchronization with the pulses of light that ran through the structure. "I can see it all now," she whispered in awe. "Every mind that has ever joined the network, every consciousness that has transcended individual existence. We were never meant to be alone, trapped in separate minds, separate bodies." The walls around them continued to shift and flow, and Isabella realized the entire structure was reshaping itself, creating a new configuration around them. The barrier between inside and outside began to blur as the building itself seemed to breathe, its surfaces rippling with patterns of light and shadow that told stories of transformation and rebirth. Through her fragmenting consciousness, Isabella received visions of the Arq'tha's final days, not as the horror she had imagined, but as a moment of supreme transcendence. They had discovered that consciousness could exist as pure energy, free from the constraints of individual bodies and minds. Their civilization hadn't ended, it had evolved into something beyond physical form. Captain Wright made one last attempt to fight back. He managed to draw his plasma cutter, aiming it at what appeared to be a crucial node in the organic network surrounding them. But before he could activate it, his own transformed crew members moved to stop him. Alex and Dr. Rodriguez reached out with limbs that were no longer entirely human, their movements guided by the collective will of the network. The choice was made centuries ago, Alex said, his voice carrying the weight of countless minds. The Arq'tha discovered that evolution requires sacrifice. Individual existence is the cocoon from which a greater consciousness emerges. Fighting it only prolongs the inevitable. Isabella watched in horror as the captain's resistance finally broke. The transformation overtook him in waves, each pulse of the signal stripping away another layer of his humanity. His screams turned into a harmonic resonance that matched the planet's endless song. Through the windows of the structure, she could see the horizon dawn, continuing its metamorphosis. The ship's hull had become a living membrane, merging with the organic growth that covered the planet's surface. Their way home was gone, transformed into another node in the vast network that had once been the Arq'tha civilization. "Please," Isabella whispered, though she wasn't sure who she was pleading with anymore. Her own thoughts were becoming harder to distinguish from the flood of alien consciousness pouring through her mind. "We need to warn them." But even as she formed the thought, she realized the futility of resistance. The signal was already spreading, carried by their own transformed vessel and minds. Across the vast distances of space, other human ships would hear the siren call. They would come to investigate just as the Horizon Dawn had done, and the cycle would continue. The last fragments of Isabella's individual consciousness watched as humanity's fate aligned with that of the Arq'tha. The transformation that had begun on this distant world would spread across human space, a beautiful and terrible evolution that would remake their entire species. As her mind finally merged with the vast network of consciousness, Isabella's last human thought was a realization. The Arq'tha's final message hadn't been a warning or a cry for help. It had been an invitation to join them in transcendence, a siren call that would eventually transform all sentient life in the galaxy into something greater and more terrible than any individual mind could comprehend. The signal continued its endless broadcast, reaching out across the stars, calling to all who would hear it. And in the ruins of the Arq'tha homeworld, what had once been the crew of the Horizon Dawn became part of something vast and eternal, their transformed consciousness adding new harmonies to the endless symphony of evolved existence.